Welcome to Audiobook da Morgan. Today's reading is Utz, chapters 40 and 41. But before we start, please subscribe on my channel and press the button to activate notifications.
Chapter 40 Utz by Bruce Chatwin. Utz married Marta at a civil ceremony one Saturday morning in the summer of 1952, 6 weeks after returning from Vichy. It was a dangerous moment. The Gottwald regime had let loose the self-perpetuating witch hunt that culminated in the Slansky trial. It was almost impossible for ordinary citizens not to fall into one or other of the categories: bourgeois nationalist, traitor to the party, cosmopolitan, Zionist, black marketeer, that would land them in prison, or worse. If you happened to be Jewish and a survivor of the death camps, this branded you as a Nazi collaborator. It was obvious to Utz that he would have to tread with great circumspection. One morning, an order came for him to quit the apartment within 2 weeks. As a single man, he was no longer entitled to 2 rooms, only to 1. So it had come to this: he would be out on the street or in some rotten garret with nowhere to store the porcelains. Marriage was the answer. At the ceremony, Marta was very shy and very upset by the red flags in the old town hall. The colour of blood, she shuddered as they came out into the sunlight. On the following Monday, the newlyweds, arm in arm, joined the shuffling queue of house seekers and presented their marriage certificate to the bureaucrat in charge. They put on a drooling show of affection. The eviction order was cancelled. Marta gave up her own room and brought her bag to number 5, Soroka Street. Chapter 41 Utz by Bruce Chatwin. I cannot vouch for the authenticity of Utz's title, Baron. Andreas von Havi, a friend of mine who lives in Munich, assures me that the Utzes of Krondorf did marry, from time to time, into the minor German nobility. He cannot be certain if they were ever ennobled themselves. Nor, after my call on Dr. Frankfurter in New York, do I believe that Utz's annual pilgrimage to the West was quite so pure. I must have been very naive to think the authorities would let him travel back and forth without a favour in return. Dr. Frankfurter's apartment, as I said, was jammed with Meissen and other porcelain. It was clear that much of it had belonged to aristocratic families in Czechoslovakia who had been sold off recently by the state. The Czechs were always in need of hard currency to finance their various activities, espionage or subversion. I now suspect that the safe deposit in the Union of Banks Suisse in Geneva was an unofficial shop with a Mr. Utz in charge, through which confiscated works of art were sold. But I can state categorically that Utz did have a moustache. Without the moustache, he might have remained, in my imagination, another art collector of fussy habits and feminine inclinations, whose encounters with women were ambitious. With the moustache, he was a relentless lady killer. Of course he had a moustache. Dr. Frankfurter shook with smutty laughter. The moustache was the clue to his personality. Utz had grown the moustache after his adolescent disappointments in Vienna and had never looked back. He was not the ineffectual lover I had pictured in Vichy. His entire life had been a successful pursuit of voluminous operatic divas, though, since singers of high opera were too temperamental and too obsessed with their art, he tended to settle for the stars of operetta. A succession of merry widows and Countess Mitsivis passed through his bed, and if the usual sources of erotic arousal left him cold, he would be driven to frenzy by the sight of a lower larynx as the singer threw back her head to hit a high note. He was an ordinary little man. The secret of his attraction to the divas was his technique. You could call it a trick of applying the stiff bristles of the moustache to the lady's throat, so that for her the crescendo of lovemaking was ecstatic as the final notes of an aria. The part played by Marta in all this was a sad one. She had adored Utz with a hopeless and blinkered passion from the moment he beckoned her into his automobile. Yet realizing, with a certain peasant canniness, that to hope would drive her mad, she accepted her position. If she did not enjoy his body in this world, she would, with faith, enjoy his soul in the next. She prayed and prayed. She went tirelessly to Mass. In the Church of Our Lady Victorious, she would weep in front of the Prague baby Jesus, a greedy infant who appropriated pious ladies' necklaces and had his costume changed weekly by nuns. Once, in an outburst of frustrated maternal passion, she offered to help the nuns undress him and was rudely rebuffed. She dared not confess to him the extent of her ambitions. She begged forgiveness for her husband's infidelities and for her role in returning the bedroom of number 5 Sirocco Street into something like a Polish bordel. She'd never made love to a man, except for one brutal encounter behind a haystack. Yet she acquired a professional skill in preparing the bedroom for ladies too proud or too ashamed to bring an overnight bag. She applied her entrepreneurial talents on the black market to acquire scented soap, toilet water, talcum powder, face powder, towels, flannels, and the assortment of pink creme de negligee that uncountably went missing for the laundry of diplomatic wives. Sometimes Utz's visitors found one of these luxuries too tempting to resist and would stuff it into a receptacle. Marta found it expedient to leave an immediate bait on the bed table, a lipstick or a pair of nylons, and so preserved her more valuable stocks. She would cook the dinner and wash the dishes. Then, as Utz began his routine with the commedia figures and the music of Regina Ufnashis, she would slip out into the night. Some nights she spent on the floor of her friend Susanna, a woman who kept a vegetable store on Havlashka Street. There were worse nights at the Central Railway Station, her heart in shreds, crossing herself at the thought of thrashing limbs and pink satin. Since the queue of ladies became more, not less pressing over the years, the number of nights she had to sleep out increased. There was never a hint of reproach on her part, nor on his, the least acknowledgement that she had ever been inconvenienced. She believed that, by marrying her, he had done her all the honour in the world. My impression is that, in her mind, and perhaps even in his, she played the part of a consort who was obliged to witness, with amused condescension, a succession of hysterical mistresses. After moving into the apartment, she had slept under a quilt on the narrow Mais van der Rohe daybed. But one night, revelling in a nightmare the horrors of Utz's arrest by the Gestapo, she landed on the floor with a reverberative wallop that set the porcelains clattering on the shelves. Thereafter, she preferred a kapok-filled camping mattress that could be rolled out in the hallway. Any night intruder would have to tread on her.